Hello everybody and welcome to the debut episode of Talking Events. I'm Gerald Conway and I'm here at the Business Design Centre in London, where in September we introduced 300 industry professionals to the UK government pilot. Over this three-part episode we'll talk you through every decision made and introduce you to the unsung heroes behind the scenes. First up we speak to Chris Skeith from the AEO, Rachel Parker from the AEV and Andrew Harrison from ESSA. Well, thank you all for joining me. Before we start talking about Secure Expo, I think it's really important to understand how we got to that point. With the UK kind of going into lockdown in March, the associations united on what seemed to be kind of collaborative goals. How did those kind of conversations begin? Andrew?
I mean, as a group of associations, I mean, we form the Events Industry Alliance, so we have that natural synergy and that history of working together anyway. So there was never a point this year where ESSA, AEO, and AEV had to, form or come together and create something. It was in existence, which has been a benefit. It's been a benefit to the process we've been going through. So it became natural that as a group of associations and via the EIA that we tackled these topics as a group. We all day to day act independently of each other, and we have our own focuses and projects and members and teams that we work with at head office. But when as an industry we're faced with something of the scale of this, and let's all face it, the scale of what we're faced with at the moment it's been greater than anything we've taken on before. But it naturally becomes something that we try to tackle as the EIA in a collaborative manner.
I think perfectly summarised by Andrew there, but what we've been able to do, so as we all represent our members, everything we always do is about our members, but often the things that our mutual members want are the same. And that's why the EIA works perfectly well. So there is no point in trying and specifically looking at the lobbying affair, because this is relevant to this conversation. There's no point in Andrew and Rachel investing the time and the energy in developing relationships with government departments and government officials all separately, because that's a waste of members' money. So what we've been able to do in this case is the front and centre on the public affairs piece was myself. That was a role that AEO assumed on behalf of all associations. So for nearly 13 years, I've been involved in government meetings, developing relationships, and I think it's probably fair to say that as an industry, our asks have been fairly light touch up to this point. And to quote both the Secretary of State and the Minister for Tourism, we've probably been undervalued and underappreciated. But we were fortunate to have the relationships that we were able to exploit. So it was business as usual, but souped up. And I liken the effort that we've had to do with public affairs up to COVID was about 5% of my time, and Rachel and AV probably spent slightly more looking after research on behalf of the industry, because there's no point in three associations trying to work out the size and scale and coming up with three different numbers and spend that money. So why don't one of us take a lead on it? So perhaps it wasn't a fair divvy up. So I think Rachel's had the harder job of late nurture, but I've certainly taken a bit more this year in regards to public affairs, and it's become 105% of my time. But we've also supported each other through that, both in terms of information, data points, data sets, and then as things have moved on, it feels like every day is different. We've each taken a lead in certain areas, so we're again a very efficient way of driving the agenda. So again, the platform was in place, it was very efficiently done, and we were nimble and been able to react because we had established relationships, and that's the police that come in just to get me. So
I think Andrew and Chris have both spoken very eloquently and said that, I mean, that the initial intro question was, what happened beforehand? How do we work together? I think what has happened is we did work well together beforehand, but actually now we are tighter than ever. We've collaborated so well as three individuals, but actually three associations, which obviously comes under the EIA banner. And as Chris has alluded to, up until now, we've all individually taken leads and things, but it's kind of gelled a little bit more. I've become a little bit more of a wingman for Chris, certainly on some of the government stuff, and Andrew has certainly picked picked up on sort of on the PR side as well, and helping on that side. So we've all sort of naturally found our areas where we can help. And obviously, at the end of the day, we're supporting our members and doing what it is that our members want. And ultimately, our members all want the same thing. They all want our industry back up and running and being able to open events again.
Yeah, as associations, I think you were perfectly placed to be able to have those conversations. You already had the relationship with government. You could represent the industry voice. You already had the relationships on both sides, I guess. When did those conversations specifically kind of start to commence with the government about restarting the industry, and what kind of the roadmap looked for?
I was to say, well, we sent our first letter to the Prime Minister in March, so literally pretty much as lockdown started. So it was as soon, pretty much as soon as it was starting to happen. Venues were starting to close, and then we went into lockdown. So we sent the letter to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor asking for support to support the supply chain and the event sector. So immediately.
And as well as the public-facing letters and stuff, the conversations were immediate. There were a number of things that we had to address. I remember going on, being invited to BBC TV to talk about, our events open, and it's like, well, they're open until they need to close. And then obviously we know things moved so quickly back in March, but the conversations are already in place. And what uniquely we were able to do is set out a bit of a plan that we were able to change as we needed to look at things. So there were a number of things that we had to demonstrate to both government but also our customers. So we had to demonstrate the safety case, which we'll elaborate on a little bit later on. We had to demonstrate the economic case, the impact on SMEs, the supply chain, to the laudable hospitality industry, which is much bigger than us, but hotels lay dormant without events. And then we also demonstrated the international competitive case, so how other countries were handling the vaccine and the pandemic, and how we could learn from what they were doing and share with government. And I think the sort of the final point is what other associations are doing, and as well as collaborating amongst ourselves, we've probably on almost daily calls now with other associations in the same space. So the collaboration hasn't just been amongst the EIA associations, it's been with other associations, so Jane Longhurst and the MIA, for example, the BVEP, of which I'm vice chair. There was a lot of information sharing amongst those, and then trying to bring in other people that were trying to do things. But it was, headline numbers that we've used regularly are, we have an £11.3 billion economic impact done by an Oxford economic impact study that AEV led on back end of last year. So we were able to demonstrate that. We support over 55,000 direct jobs, over 114,000 direct and indirect jobs. But probably most importantly is the impact on the economies that we serve. So there's 180,000 exhibitors that take part in the 1,077 trade and consumer shows. So all of a sudden we all became absolutely well versed on all our statistics, and thank the Lord that we had them. Because as a sector, we've not been that good in the past, and we've not had to prove that. But it was a decision the EIA board took about 18 months ago that we really needed to sort of size and scale things. And something that AEV have done for us for a number of years is our size and scale index, so the SASI report that demonstrates that. So it was very much, I think in that meeting, it was maybe the scale, but also you need to be reflective of what that scale impact is. So some event-based hotels, resort-based hotels around events, their 93% occupancy is down. They employ 72% local people to fill those hotels, and 75% of their occupancy is driven by events. So the interconnectivity of what we do as a sector has been underestimated and undervalued. So having those conversations at the early stage was very much about how everything was interconnected, and then try to sort of talk about how if they get going, we get going. But everything was caveated throughout, when it is safe to do so, which is why the pilot event was so important.
Andrew, it was clear at points during this that we were quite disappointed with the government response or lack of. How did those kind of conversations continue, and what were you doing kind of behind the scenes?
From an association point of view, we started to deliver that additional impact and pressure internally in terms of how we start to change what the what the government's agenda was in the early days. And the government's agenda was very much looking at other sectors which were very much in the public profile, very public facing, and they continue to be so in many respects. And that's how governments traditionally will react. They will react to try and protect the public construct, and they will react in a popularist way, where they will, try to maintain the support of the masses and give the masses what they need. But so it's been a hell of a job to mobilise and have our own conversations to start turning that dial. So what Chris referenced before as an industry which has been light touch in what is needed, to demonstrate the impacts that this was having, and the level of support that was required and is still required. I mean, we've not switched off. We've not switched off at any point as a group of associations and with our members. We've achieved a certain amount, and in many areas it's a lot. The all secure document, the pilots, the go dates, and although the imminent and sort of the reality for many hasn't changed, they're huge wins, and to be named as a sector and prioritised in recent government legislation with regards to the most recent support packages, such as the ARG. That has all come on the back of lobbying, member pressure, member communication with their MPs, and but equally, it's always staying kind of understanding of the fact that there is still a huge amount of pain out there, and there has been. And within our sector, there are many thousands of people who've lost their jobs, and there are many businesses which don't exist anymore that were trading profitably. I didn't even get it on the third attempt. 9 months ago, and they don't exist anymore. And the people who worked in those businesses don't exist anymore, and it's tragic, and it's really difficult to understand how that could have happened. And well-known, household names within our industry no longer exist anymore, and people who've been worked in our industry for whether it be a year or 5 or 10 or 20 years, and have had those impacts. That impact with people, they're not in our industry currently because they've lost their jobs. But we continue to push in all of those areas, and it's important that our members are involved in that and play the fullest of roles that they can. And I think we've tried to be as engaged as we can with our members throughout this. And I think we have. I think we've been successful in that. And it's not just been Chris, me, Rachel, or the board of the EIA or the board of ESSA. It's been, throughout all of this, our members, even non-members in the wider industry, we've had to engage, and we've needed their support to push in areas that we just simply couldn't.
Rachel, specifically in terms of that kind of government response, was there ever a moment that we kind of you reviewed what that strategy was and any kind of changes to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the initial government response, we realised that actually we were going to have to take the lead on this. We realised that there are a lot of sectors were sitting back and waiting for the government to tell them what it was they were going to do, but we actually, that's what we do. We write stuff, we build stuff, we create stuff. So actually it made sense for us to take the bull by the horns, and actually for us to take the lead and go, okay, we're going to tell the government how it is that we're going to get ourselves out of this, and how we are going to plan and create and deliver events for the future in a COVID secure way. Thus began the journey of All Secure. So was that a nice lead in?
It's a very nice lead in, thank you. So I think I've been referring to the All Secure standard as a triumph of collaboration. Many leading industry professionals involved in its conception. Chris, how did that come about?
I think it started, I think a lot of people rushed with answers and didn't really know what the questions were. And then we're very fortunate that we've got some very clever people that work in this industry, and there were actually 3 organisers that created a global template and shared it. So that was Reed, that was Informa, and that was Clarion. And they, at a global level, came up with, oh, if we were going to reopen safely, what might it look like? And they came up with the All Secure standard, and then that was offered to everyone. And from an association perspective, we had cross-association groups from the start looking at how can we do it all. When people want to say, oh, we could put people 3.5 meters apart, and we go, whoa, no, we don't need to worry about that. What we need to worry about is how can we manage people safely? How can we manage social distancing? How can we get people into events contactless? Those sort of things. So that framework was really, really useful. And we had countless meetings across the venues, the organisers and suppliers, driving almost like the adaptation of that in with the government, but also within our members. And so we start off with, again, as we said before, we have our individual ops groups, we have our individual cross-association groups as well. So it was just another topic for them to do, and they went with that within vigour. But what was also very nice, particularly on Andrew on this one, is we then created that in a framework that the government accepted, and there were 13 iterations before All Secure was published. But a massive win is you go for advice about running a business event in the exhibition centre, and you click on All Secure Expo, and it goes to all 3 associations' websites where the documentation is held. So wow, from an industry undervalued and underappreciated, we are now on direct links with government websites on guidance on how to implement your event. So it started off by a workflow for our cross-association groups. It started off by taking something globally that we were able to adapt locally into the UK market, but what we were able to do is adapt that to all the rules and regulations and all the good work like the e-guide does and all those other groups, so actually adapt that for implementation there. So in terms of a set of guidelines, that's how that pushed forward. And then the actual physical pilot is obviously another bit to the story. So,
I've been asked the question of, what's the benefit of the All Secure document when we can't run exhibitions? But the key is that you can't run an exhibition without a framework that the government approved. So it had to be created, and the associations were front and centre to create that. And as having those collaborative teams within our membership, from an ESSA point of view, I mean, we pulled about 30 companies into this to help create the supply element of it. And we all had, our different groups who could feed into it. It was a huge effort. And like I said, as Chris has mentioned, it took 13 drafts to get it published, and we've just finished the 14th. Because obviously every time there's a government update on how people can interact and how people can move within tiers and so on and so forth, that feeds down into ultimately us having to reissue and redraft. So we're having a moment here where it's giving us an opportunity to reflect very quickly. It's an hour, 45 minutes that we can reflect, but it's a lot of work. A lot of work
indeed, but also I think you're right to point that out, that this is a living document, so to speak, that as these kind of scientific breakthroughs happen, we're responding to that as well. This isn't set in stone. This is something that we will constantly review, and it will always be relevant. Rachel, if I may, the conversation with DCMS and Public Health England, when did that start to circle around a pilot event?
It was in the summer. Obviously, we were starting to champ at the bit, where the government was starting to open up sectors and basically, lockdown was easing. We'd come out of lockdown and things were being eased off. And I think we knew then that we were going to have to come up with something, and Chris might have to correct me on this, on the details of it. But we knew that ultimately the pilot event, we were not only were we going to write the guidance and show them that we could do it that way, that they needed to support it, but we then knew that ultimately we'd have to demonstrate it. So it was around the time when the Prime Minister gave us the go date in July for the 1st of October. So and it was at that stage where it was like, right, okay, well, we need to run with a pilot. But if my memory serves me correctly, and trust me, my memory's not very, is shocking actually at the moment. So I don't think we quite gleaned the date. We didn't get the date very quickly, did we? I think whilst we knew we were going to have to run a pilot, it was kind of going to happen in September at some point.
My memory seems to, the first week of July, I think we were notified that we were going to be responsible for partnering with government to run the pilot. And I think the original date, because the reason this it sticks in my mind is because I had a family holiday booked, and so I always remember the 10th of August being the first date, and then it got pushed back a week, and then pushed back a week, and then in the end it ended up as being the 2nd of September. So that it always sticks in my head, because it was you know, how selfishly it was interfering with my family summer holiday.
But that's how those dates are remembered, because I remember the Prime Minister announcing the 1st of October, basically giving us our opening date, which of course we know obviously then didn't happen. But as we were literally arriving in Padstow in Cornwall, so and I was telling the children to be quiet in the back of the car whilst I had Boris on the radio. So yes, so basically the work started in July at a pace. We knew that a pilot was going to have to happen, and oh my goodness, the suddenly realization, right, we have got to run an event, and we've got all secure. So at the same time, basically, it was as we got the go date, we were then given the green light to release the all secure standards, which that obviously went live out on the website in July as well. So then so with that, then we started the planning for the pilot, which then we decided we needed a team. We needed a professional team of organisers, I guess, and from an operational perspective. So Chris pulled into his members, talked into his members, and we got a handful of senior operations managers who pulled together as a team, together working with the Business Design Centre, which was the venue which was chosen to be the venue to host it. And of course, then we were looking at the suppliers to them that could help us. And of course, Visit played a very key part in that in terms of the registration process, which is one of the major components, actually, if let's face it, of the event. It was one of the most important and most components for it, because it was all about communicating with the participants and the delegates, and showing the evidence to the government of how that communication process will work, and in a safe way, making sure the right information is sent out. And it has to be said that Visit, Gerard, you did do a fantastic job on that on behalf of the industry, so thank you very much.
I definitely felt the pressure, but it was a wonderful kind of collaborative effort, and we had a wonderful group of kind of very, very talented organisers from Clarion, Reed, Hive and Informer, and the team just worked so hard, as much as kind of people from the BDC, everybody just really chipped in and kind of got this done. Everybody supported each other, and well, it bared fruit in the end. It was a
piece of collaboration, and everybody was behind it. Everybody wanted to come to it. Everybody wanted to support it. So I mean, that was the thing. We had to get 300 people through the doors, didn't we? And at one point we thought that wasn't going to be an issue. Then we thought, oh no, it is going to be an issue, because it's literally first week of September, and because the dates sort of kept changing as well. But in the end, no, everybody wanted to be there, and then that was actually one of the biggest concerns, though, wasn't it? It's because we're an industry that are quite sociable, and people hadn't seen each other for such a long time. The biggest concern was that everybody was going to know everybody, and we were having to restrain ourselves not from wanting to hug and kiss each other, and so which was one of the key things for those poor stewards that had to go around, the COVID stewards and supervisors having to go around and remind people that they had to keep 2 meters apart, and so yeah. And again, I think we were all just getting used to wearing face masks as well, weren't we? Because the face mask was only brought in July. And people, if you hadn't really been out and about much, then you weren't really that used to wearing a face mask. So again, it was also recognising people under the face mask. So from that perspective, it was phenomenal. It was amazing to see everybody, and amazing that so many people supported it. And ultimately, then to see potentially what it could look like. At the nth degree. I mean, we went over the top. We put 110% into it, and we hope that when events do finally roll out, we'll certainly be able to, from a risk assessed point of view, be able to pull back in terms of distancing and spacing and all of that. But that's one for later.
On site at the BDC, Chris, you were able to kind of walk around with DCMS and Public Health England. You kind of were able to explain the measures that we put in place. How did you gauge a kind of opinion at the time of how they thought the event was going?
Before I answer that, I think we have one thing I'd just like to say is that if you look at the virus, and look in environments where it spreads. It's what we do. So from the very start, we were given the biggest hospital ball in the world, because you bring people together in an environment for a period of time from different regions. So back to some of the biggest challenges is probably it's all health-driven, scientific evidence-based back, which is the consistent message that the governors have given us. So we've been fighting that all the way through, and AllSecure is a perfect example of this risk-assessed approach and basis of it. And again, back to Rachel's point about what it looks like. We're not going to put in an event that's going to challenge whether it's 2.2 meters social distancing, 1.9 or 1.6. You're going to put in a social distance, say we can demonstrate that. Every event, every scenario is unique and built with safety in mind. So that's one thing I learned from the pilot is I remember chatting to one member, they go, oh, can't make that conference centre work. It's like, you're missing the point. You know, we're proving our ability to create safe environments. In this case, we have highly vulnerable people that have to be socially distanced to do it all. So we probably could have portrayed that a little bit better. But what we did was quite fascinating in the walk around, and Rachel was with me as well, and I'd love to take some credit to actually understand everything that was going on. What we actually did is we brought in our troupe of supporters, and you mentioned the organisers, but it was also the BDC, and you know, they say, oh, how does the air circulation work? So Bradley Cordes walks in and talks about, well, here's the report we've had on this and this. So we got the experts in. We had David Cunningham from Visit, you know, like, well, this is how we track people in and out, and look, here's a video message of this and how it all works and pans out together. So so Rachel and I had the opportunity to walk around initially with a person from PHE and DCMS, and then later on the newly appointed senior director within DCMS joined us, and we were able to sort of collar them for another hour. Wouldn't let them out of the building. We bought them lunch just to in a pre-packed safe sandwich, of course, socially distanced in their cafe, but we spent a lot of time with them talking about everything. So it wasn't us necessarily. Again, the beauty of this industry and the beauty of the talent that we've got is that, you know, we had, you know, David coming in and talking about the Rego bits and the flow of people. We had Bradley talking about the air circulation, and we had the ops people talking about how they manage the registration before and after, and the messaging, because again, one of the unique things and differences that we have is our GDPR compliant data. So we know who's coming, how they feel, we tell them when to come. They very, you know, so all these things are very good points of differences. So the walk around was like a cast of thousands, which was brilliant. But then towards the end, we sort of, you know, it's almost like, you know, have we passed? Is it all right? And as a direct consequence of that, the chap from PHE was very, very complimentary. I actually then had a call with the head of PHE to say, actually, there are lots of learnings from that event on how you've applied the AllSecure standard to create that safe environment. So I had a long chat with the head of PHE about taking some of the lessons learned from our application to other sectors. So, well, actually, they do it like this, which is really good. But notwithstanding, that was a big old ask, because Public Health England and the CMO, you know, what do we do? Oh, we bring gatherings of people together with lots of safety measures and caveats, but that's what we do. And if you look back at the backdrop, I watched the programme BBC a little while ago, and it's looked at, you know, you had Cheltenham happening, you had the Liverpool football match happening, you had the event at QE2 happening. So all those things are going on where you're bringing all these people, all the people who are away skiing in Italy becoming super spreaders and bringing it all back. You know, it's unfortunately something that thrives in the environment that we create. So proving that safety case with AllSecure, demonstrating it, and back to the guidance piece. You know, it took us weeks to get approval to talk to members about it, because we want to plan. You know, we want to build confidence with our customers. We want to be able to go out and say, look, this is the framework we've created. So that took ages, and even longer was the actual ability to then talk about the fact that the pilot has passed, which was incredibly frustrating, and but really important that we sit back and reflect. So again, thank you for this opportunity to talk about, you know, reminisce a little bit about one of the biggest highlights of the year in terms of this collaborative effort. So yeah, thanks, cool.
Back in July, we'd been given the date of October to return. We've had this wonderful, successful pilot, as we now know, and then we had the devastating news of a delay. Andrew, what was the kind of response from the EIA's perspective?
Yeah, it wasn't a great day. I think I think internally we had we had a few moments where we'd had a bit of a heads up, didn't we? I think we knew we sometimes get 30 minutes notice, a morning's notice that something's rumbling or something's happening. I think it's safe to say that momentarily it was pretty shattering, to be honest. I think mentally it was pretty shattering. I think we've just spoken for the best part of an hour as to the amount of work that had gone in to securing that as a moment that the industry had been focusing on. And it came in early July when we were told about it, and as long as we kind of met various requirements, such as the all secure sign off, the pilot sign off, and there weren't too many other bumps in the road, then we'd have successfully moved through that period, and we would have retained it. Unfortunately, throughout all of this, there are elements which are out of our hands, and the national kind of wave of infection and that rising again, starting to steadily rise again from kind of August onwards. I think we started to get sight of the numbers starting to go in the wrong direction, and that was kind of came through Europe again, didn't it? Where it started in certain countries, and I suppose the realists were sat there just going, this isn't going to happen. It's slowly moving across, and it's only going to be a matter of time before the numbers start going up to a point where industries, not just our industry, but other industries, got their go date removed as well. So it was a moment where, again, and it was ultimately a false dawn, I suppose. And who knows how many events would have taken place this autumn and early winter. But it was a focus, and in a world where we've all had our kind of focuses taken away from us, or our daily focus and our what we achieve on a daily basis in our lives, it was something we were holding on to. So there was a moment where we had to reflect and regroup. We regrouped quickly, and we had to move on from that and start to understand what our next roadmap would be. But equally, that was a date where, from an ESSA point of view, and our members, it was a date where, there was the hope that, companies could start turning those cogs again, and they could move away from some of those industries they moved into to try and, generate a new living temporarily, or mothballed their businesses, and they set their sights on hopefully, not necessarily having a successful autumn, but definitely moving into early 2021 and seeing that glimmer of hope a lot earlier than what we're seeing at this moment in time. So it was pretty shattering, to be honest. But we did regroup quickly because we've got to, and you've got to restate your case and start those conversations again and re-engage and move forward as best and as quickly as you can.
Chris, speaking with people who attended the event afterwards, there was a very positive response to this. Would you have done anything different in hindsight?
I think probably a bit more narrative before. The fact that this is a risk-assessed approach, because it's quite tough, isn't it? People were desperate to meet and catch up. That was really important. So you were on a bit of a winner. I was quite relieved, really, because some of the conversations you have with government, it's just like, yeah, we'll do a pilot. Yeah, name the date, name the number. Yeah, it's fine, we'll be all right. But knowing that you got everybody so critically bought into getting it to work. I think the only thing I'd probably change is, try to get a bit more lead time, because me popping you an email at 4 a.m. in the morning and you replying straight away is not a good sign, but thank you very much for that quick reply. But everybody worked so hard, and I think that in terms of the physical delivery, I'd probably a bit more narrative at the beginning, just to explain it is a risk-assessed approach, and this is the context. Our sole aim is to demonstrate to government our ability to create safe environments. So, but a little bit more time to do it, a bit more narrative, perhaps. But just jumping back to Andrew's point about the call I had with the director for one of the government departments, to be very nameless, is just like, I'm very sorry, Chris, I haven't worked hard enough for your sector. We will try harder next time. So the relationships that we built up with those officials, to have them taking that personal, hit that they haven't managed it. I know it's little solace, and people are in desperate places, businesses are in desperate places, people, it's going to be really tough, and it has been really tough for people, and which gives us the power and the strength to keep fighting. But the fact that you've been able to develop those relationships with those officials, that they felt that they personally let the sector down by the removal of that go date. But when you've got that compounding evidence of rising infection rates and trends and everything going along, the government's got a very complex thing to do. And I guess the timing was unfortunate. And somehow getting them to let us talk about it earlier would have been good as well. But I tried every trick out of the book to try and get them to sign it off. I did the drop close. I did all the little bits and tactics to try and get, look, we need to tell our members about it. And it actually was Andrew that got that one out of the bag. And he did the definition of a drop close is like, we've updated the guidance again. We're telling our members on Friday, unless you tell us we can't. And that email didn't come, so out that went. So I think it's there. But event-wise, it was great. I mean, you just saw the best in everybody. You saw the reason why we do what we do, and the reason why we do our jobs is, I always say, it's all about the people, and we were able to see those people in action, put together the theoretical plan into a live environment, prove that we are safe, given the backdrop of what we've got to show to the health officials. So no, it was super cool. It was a good day. It was a good day.
Andrew has spoken about some of the challenges that we had in 2020, and for not just businesses but individuals as well. But All Secure has had such an impact on the industry, a lasting legacy, if you will. Rachel, how do you feel about that?
I feel very proud, actually, of us as the associations, but as an industry as well, that we're able to pull together. And I think, as we've mentioned before, we started working on All Secure in April. It wasn't released until July. That's how long it took, although it was sat there waiting to go. It was down to DCMS. But ultimately, yeah, we demonstrated what this industry can do when we collaborate together, when we set our minds to work about. We know what we're doing, we're professionals. Ultimately, actually, this industry should have been the one actually managing the pandemic, let's face it, because we'd probably be in a much better place than we are today. But no, I think it is a lasting legacy, and I think something that obviously we'll keep updating, keep it going, and it's a focus for next year for when we've got events going. And interesting, a number of my members who have indoor and outdoor spaces, and they have been able to run a number of events over the summer, be it markets, be it outdoor events, because of course those were allowed. But they have run it alongside, we're using the All Secure standards rather than potentially using other guidance and regulations that are coming, because All Secure actually are more all-encompassing, and actually they say they're easier to understand and easier to read. So again, massive compliment to the industry and to everybody that's worked on it. So yeah, definitely. And obviously alongside that as well, it's All Secure, we have the e-guide as well, which of course is the industry Bible, which is something that's produced within the associations. And we produced an e-guide COVID appendix that sits alongside that. So they both sort of sit hand in hand. And again, it's a piece of work that is done predominantly by the venues, but very much fed in from suppliers and organisers, and have all had a hand in it. So yeah, proud, and really proud and pleased that we were able to do that. As I said, that was just one piece of work though that took a long time, lots of hours of work, but one piece of work that has been a big success. Andrew?
It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, because although it's been an amazing body of kind of and demonstrated collaboration, I suppose equally it's and again, this is my personal opinion. I suppose it's tainted by the fact that we haven't been able to truly put it to test. We're not. Our goal date. It would have been amazing to have seen that framework be used. And I know it has been used. There were events which took place, and they used elements of the All Secure framework. So I suppose it will. It's yet to be seen, I suppose, and the document's going to be changing. It's already changed. It's growing. It's gone from 9 pages to 12 pages, and I'm sure it'll be 13 pages soon. And it may shrink again as the government change in, from a tiered system potentially to a different system come next year. So I think apart from demonstrating how we mobilised and obviously organised and influenced government and worked with government and collaboratively worked with government across our sector, I suppose it's always slightly tainted with the fact at this moment in time, from a personal point of view, that we haven't truly been able to roll this out again. Every organiser used this as the backbone for running events in the very, very near future, i.e. now or in the new year, and equally venues, using it at this moment in time, as their guidance for organisers to work within their venues and people to build within their venues, and our members to, ESSA members to start understanding how they can build and create with their clients based on a risk-assessed approach. We're still in the starting blocks with it, although it exists, and it's amazing that it's acknowledged, and it was a body of work created by the associations and its government acknowledged. Is that until it's being used in its true sense, if indeed it ever is, and I'm sure it will be. I suppose it's always got that feeling of being something which is part of the bigger picture. It's part of the bigger roadmap. It's not the only thing which is going to, you talk about having a lasting effect from this process. It's going to be an element of how we've influenced or developed that roadmap towards getting our industry open. So it's important, and it's important that we wrote it and our industry was given that opportunity to create that with government. But equally, I think once we come through this, eventually it will be one of several key elements as to how the industry worked together with the associations to bring us back online.
And Chris?
Being controversial, I can't wait to rip it up. There's stuff that we're working on at the moment that we can't talk about on testing and all these different building blocks to come back. I can't wait for us to go back to the sensible way that we need to do business. We're having to demonstrate measures over and above other sectors to get going again, but that's because we're a sector where everything goes together. So that'd be lovely. I'd love to be sitting with you next Christmas and go, we don't need the testing regime, we don't need all secure anymore. However, it's not actually just about us. So I think I feel very proud, like Rachel. It came at a great time when the industry needed some hope, but it also showed the best in class that we are. We are world leading venues, organisers and suppliers. So I think it enabled people to do and demonstrate what their passion is. It enabled people to come together, and I think it was really great. And it's part of a package of measures. But if we step away from ourselves at the moment, we've also got to think about our customers. There's research out there that shows 3/4 of people will come back if they feel safe. So the fact that we have government-written guidance, we've demonstrated a safety case, enables the organisers and the venues to talk to their customers and clients and the suppliers about we can create safe environments. So I think as much as a lack of ability to demonstrate it and scale with lots of events, it's actually given us the narrative to build the confidence, because we've gone from it's a 12-week lead time when you're postponing something in the short term. We had the race to postpone at the start, to actually this is how we build for the future. So we have a long lead time for events, but part of that is this robust safety protocols. Part of this is all the other things that we're doing and demonstrating the value of why people need to get back to live as well. So inevitably, it's just part of a bigger puzzle. But at the time, it certainly gave people hope. It also gave people opportunity to have a different conversation with their customers, but also demonstrate to everybody that we can create these things. So I thought it brought out the best people, feel incredibly proud. It was a good moment in time, but I can't wait to throw it away amongst all the other things that we've had to do when we've actually got better measures to put things in together. And that's not being dismissive of everything, but it's just lovely to get back to some, the creative way that we work as a sector, the problem-solving narrative that we've got. But it's a point in time, but a very good point in time, and very privileged to have seen the industry come together, collaborate to create that, and then given an opportunity to demonstrate that, and then most importantly, used it as part of our public affairs to demonstrate that we need to be open, which we've got, and if you look at the map of venues that are, of countries that are open at the minute, there's only one that's green. If you look around Europe, they're all closed, and it's really important. So
I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today. And I think I can speak on behalf of the industry when I say thank you very much for your efforts in 2020. It hasn't been unnoticed, and we really do appreciate it. It's been a hell of a year, and hopefully 2021 offers something a lot brighter. So thank you very much.
Thanks for all your guys' help on the pilot. It was super cool. It was a real pleasure to work with you slightly more closely, which is really good. And thanks to my colleagues as well. We are all in it together, and where we are at is all for a collaborative effort for all the members and everything they've done. Writing to those letters to MPs may seem a little pointless at the time, for example, but that collaborative approach, that constant pressure, we're in a better place now than we would have been, and we need to get to a better place, but we'll be seeking more support from everybody going forward. But a massive thank you to everybody else that's watching as well. So thank you all very much. Thank
you for watching the first episode of Talking Events, and thank you very much to Chris, Rachel and Andrew for taking the time to speak to us. Next week we'll hear from Kerry Kemp from Informa Markets, Ian Solomon from Hive, Marina Lester from Clarion Events, and Piers Kelly from Reed Exhibition on how they picked their teams to deliver the pilot and how the All Secure standard is impacting their organisations. We'll see you then.